All right. There's echo. Good evening, everyone. Um, let's see. 8 p.m. Uh-huh. Sorry for the echo. In case you hear that, we're trying to sort that out. Ikosawa, what was the problem? The TV. All right. August 29th, Thursday. Thank you all for tuning in. I see a bunch of you already logged on. Thank you for making time. As always, our bi-weekly Q&A session for 1 hour, starting 8 p.m., ending at 9 p.m. sharp. My name is Solomon Wangwe, the founder, managing director, and CEO of Goshen Acquisitions Limited and its wholly owned subsidiary, Grand Acres Limited, the most trusted land sellers in Kenya. It's a pleasure to be here after a 2-week break, and I'm looking forward to having meaningful convos with you all. If you have a question, a comment, a concern, an observation, a story maybe around your land investment journeys in Kenya, please send those in. It's why we're gathered together for the next hour. If you know someone who will benefit from today's session, please also send them a link to this live session. Don't be mean, don't be selfish. Only condition is they have to be people you like, love, and respect, because we only want good vibes. Good vibes only, always. So take a moment, share this link with them so that they can join, invite them to join. If you haven't done so yet, please give us a thumbs up, give us a like, and subscribe if you haven't yet. It helps the algorithm do its thing to reach more awesome people like yourselves, and we can get the message across to as many of the right people as possible. So please do so. In the meantime, I invite you to send in your questions so we can make the most of the time we have. Um, and we'll get this party started. Awesome. Here's the first one from Ken underscore. How do you pronounce that? Do you all? D-U-I D-U-I-Y-W-O-H. Forgive me, I don't know how to pronounce that second name. On Instagram says, Buddha mko na mashamba wapi sahi? Please check out our website, Ken, www.grandacres.co.ke, or you can WhatsApp us. It'll send you a link to our available inventories. The WhatsApp number is 07 0001 0001. I'll repeat that once again. That's 07 0001 0001. We're very busy right now in Laikipia County with our Acacia Cool project. Also very busy in Kajiado County with our Imbuko projects. There's only, I think, a couple of those remaining or available at the moment. So if you're interested, grab yours quickly. We have an amazing deal for those last two. We're also quite busy in Naivasha, directly opposite the Safari Center, shopping center, art cafe, Naivas, mixed use development. Also very busy on the lakefront at Elementaita. If you want more details, just check out our website or send a WhatsApp to the number I just shared, 07 0001 0001, and we'd be happy to engage you further. Thank you for your question, Ken. Collie on TikTok says, what do I need to have to put my piece of land in an RIM? Well, Collie, if your piece of land is not on the registry index map, which is what the RIM stands for, I strongly suggest you employ the professional services of a licensed or registered surveyor or surveyor's assistant who will guide you on the way forward, because the answer to that question will depend on many things. For instance, is there any disputed boundary with your property relative to your neighbors? What is the reason your property is not on the RIM already? Why is it missing? Is it a subsequent portion of a subdivision of a larger parcel prior to you owning it or during you owning it? Many questions. Licensed surveyor will guide you appropriately so that you can get your property included on the RIM. Very important. If it's not, there's a risk that you might have bought thin air. Small risk, but a risk nonetheless. You want to eliminate that as quickly and as diligently as possible, because after all, if your property is not on the registry index map, you will not qualify for the new generation title deeds that are currently being processed and issued by the Ministry of Lands by zones. So get it done quickly. Thank you for your question, Collie. I hope that helps. User 61309990894263 on TikTok. Please share your names, guys. It's just easier to pronounce your name than read out 20 numbers in a row. You say, good evening, sir. What is the difference between a certificate of lease and a title deed? Certificate of lease is an ownership document for leasehold titles or leasehold properties, I should say, whereas title deeds generally are the loose term for ownership documents for freehold properties. That's the main difference. Okay, certificate of lease is for leasehold properties. Title deed is a term loosely used to describe ownership documentation for freehold property. Thank you for your question. Ken Duyo on Instagram says, do I need a lawyer to sign a deal with you? Depends, Ken. What sort of deal are you referring to? You want to sell us land or do you want to buy land from us? In general, you do require the services of a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Okay, it's always best practice. Have a lawyer. Very often our customers will share our lawyer with us, but best practice says have your own. We don't mind if you do, but there is a risk if we were crooked or were to act in a manner that was not in your interest, you would be slightly disadvantaged, because no matter what a lawyer tells you, it is impossible for them to be completely impartial when they are acting for two or both sides of the same transaction, for two parties involved in the transaction. So have your own, let the other party have their own. Great question. Omars_Leki on Instagram says, how was Imbuko when it flooded? I mean, when it flooded all over Kenya. Imbuko was perfectly fine, Omars_Leki. We actually did a video, I think, or two during that period. So go to our archives. You can search us on YouTube. Just search for Own Land in Kenya or Grand Acres. You should be able to trace that video. It wasn't done too long ago. And you'll see that for yourself. Offside_opinions on TikTok says, how do you go about a transfer of a leasehold property? Exactly the same way as you do the others, except if it is agricultural, you will need land control board consent. If it's not, then it's slightly different, but the same applies for freehold. Uh, you could have freehold residential that does not require land control board consents, but the process is exactly the same. If you haven't done so yet, offside_opinions, please go to our website, www.grandacres.co.ke. You'll find a tab on the top right side of the screen of the web page that says checklist. Click on that tab, enter your details, and you will automatically receive a free copy of our 9 steps to buying land safely. Okay, and you will be able to see what you need for the transfer of properties. It's absolutely free. Do yourself a favor, be kind to yourself. Download it, share it with those you like, love, and respect, who are also in the habit of investing in land or maybe looking to start. Okay? It's all yours for the taking. Thanks for your question. No more questions? Ken on Instagram says again, can you just give us a prices overview? We will go to the website, but just an overview of the Naivasha project. Naivasha project opposite the Safari Center. It's a mixed use development with road or highway fronting plots, zoned commercial, 50 by 100. Those are currently selling for 11.99 million shillings only. Touching the highway directly, you literally cross the road to Art Cafe. Behind those, we have high density residential lots, also 50 by 100, meaning you are permitted to go to ground +3. You can do apartments and that sort of thing. And those are currently selling for 10.99 million shillings each. And finally, the third zone, which is medium density residential, which is to say that you're permitted to do a single family home on the 50 by 100, not apartments like the high density. Those are currently selling for only 9.99 million shillings each. Also 50 by 100, in case I haven't mentioned that. So that's a brief price overview. If you're keen, send us a DM, WhatsApp, or Instagram, whatever. We'll send you the brochure and arrange for your site visit, and you can become a proud owner of that super primely located property directly opposite the Safari Center, Art Cafe, Naivas complex there, and touching the main Naivasha Nakuru highway. Thanks for asking, Ken. Kanyi Mwangi on TikTok says, I'm a credit advisor. I have a client who does properties. They want to take out a loan. What's your advice on the things to look out for? Well, Kanyi, I would ask you if you could kindly clarify what you mean by your client does properties. What does that mean when you say a client who does properties? Then I might be able to answer that question a bit more succinctly. Nick Mwangi on Instagram, does acquiring land in a city require more legal documents than in a rural area? Yes, I would say, because land located in a city or a municipality, a gazetted municipality, tends to be leasehold properties, which also come with a different set of survey documents, generally referred to as fixed survey regime documents. Those are very sensitive, deed plans, deed maps, and that sort of thing. And therefore, the documentation is slightly more. Process is the same. You may have more legal documents, but the process is essentially the same. So you need to be knowledgeable about what documents you need to have in place, okay? Which is why, as we always do, recommend working with licensed professionals. In your case, starting with a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya to help you through that process. Yeah. Offside underscore opinions on TikTok says, can you differentiate between the types of land uses? Sure. We'll start with the most common one in Kenya, which is agricultural. Most of this country is zoned agricultural. No surprise there. It's probably true for most of the continent and maybe the rest of the world, to be honest. Um, Agricultural is one use or zoning. The second common one is residential. Third one is commercial. Fourth one is industrial. Okay, and each of those could have different sorts of densities. So medium, low, and high. You could have medium density res, high density res, low density res. Those have specific size and numerical requirements for number of units allowed within a specific size of land. That is true for all the zones. So one more time, agricultural, residential, commercial, industrial. Industrial is typically what petrol stations and factories and warehouses and such would essentially be located. So that's the main four categories. Casera.poly on Instagram says, hi, I sell apartments. Would you be open to an arrangement where you refer clients my way and give you commission? Thank you for your question, Casera. Unlike agents or brokers, we only sell what we own. So if we don't own it, no one will hear about it from us. That's a brand promise we made right from the very beginning in 2012 when we started doing what we do. So we would not be the right partner for you for that purpose. But we appreciate you asking, Casera. All the best to you. Only 18 minutes in and we're out of questions already. All right, Captain Gen Z on TikTok says, please do a diaspora visit. We are in Massachusetts waiting. Thanks, Captain Gen Z. We are so looking forward to doing so. As soon as is possible, we will be in Massachusetts by the graces of God. And we look forward to meeting you then. Thank you for that encouraging comment. So watch out, we're coming soon. underscore mat. What? How do you pronounce that? Mathek. Okay. Underscore Mathek on Instagram says, what happens if one sells you land without the process of name changing on the title deed happening and the seller happens to die? Well, technically speaking, it would mean they haven't sold you the land yet, because if ownership registration has not transferred to you, they are still the registered owner, even if they are deceased. And if they are deceased, means you have to go through succession processes, the court process, and if there was no will and testament left by that individual, you will have to wait for the courts to appoint administrators who will then be responsible for hopefully effecting the transfer to you, although there is no guarantee that they would, depending on how you went about acquiring the land. So without a name change, that's a problem, which is why we always recommend, when you're buying, as much as possible, try and ensure that you don't release all the funds until at least all the completion documents have been handed over to you, in which case you are able to effect a transfer without any further reference to the seller, or until the seller transfers to you actually a title deed in your name. There's specific gives and takes you'll have to agree to with your advocates as far as using the escrow account to manage that process, but this is why we recommend you work with licensed professionals so that they can come up with agreements that make allowances for these sorts of developments. I hope I've answered your question, underscore Matek, and all the best to you. Ken on Instagram says, have you ever thought of Eldoret now that it is a city? Well, we have, Ken, even before it was considered a city. We haven't found anything yet, but we stay open to doing something within Eldoret. So when we do, you'll hear about it. Captain Gen Z on TikTok says, I specifically am interested in a ranch somewhere in Nanyuki. What's your best proposal for me? Well, Captain Gen Z, as we always sing about in your 9 steps to safe land buying in Kenya, step number 1 is defining your goal, because that determines the rest of your journey. So when you say you're specifically interested in a ranch somewhere in Nanyuki, my first question to you would be, what size of ranch? Okay. For agriculture and retirement residential, same question remains. What size do you want your ranch to be? And when you say somewhere in Nanyuki, that's a bit general. Nanyuki is a big town. You'd have to be specific about which side of Nanyuki, because on the one hand, there are areas where you have certainly the space to buy a giant chunk of land, depending on what you consider big enough for a ranch, that you could purchase today at 200, 300,000 shillings an acre, maybe even less. And there are places in Nanyuki where you'd be spending 30 million shillings for half an acre. Presumably in those more expensive areas, you don't have space to own a ranch, which is why the price is what it is. But defining your goal is important. Size, what's your budget, which side of Nanyuki? We currently do not have anything that would meet that requirement for you, Captain Gen Z. We sell smaller value-added plots or parcels of land I think the smallest, we're about to sell the smallest size we've ever sold in Nanyuki, which is a quarter acre for residential use. Um, the largest we've ever sold was an acre. Neither of those sizes qualifies for a ranch. So we probably will not be the best partner for you if you're looking for a sizable parcel to call a ranch. Um, Best locations, in my view, are to the northwest of Nanyuki town, and that's going to be on the corridor between Nanyuki and Rumuruti. It's an 80-kilometer stretch. Tons of land there from Segera all the way to Rumuruti, and a lot more affordable than the corridor to Dol. That would be my recommendation for you, Captain Gen Z. And all success to you finding the right block of land for your agricultural and retirement residential purposes for your ranch. I guess it would be called Captain Gen Z Ranch. Hmm? Offside_opinions. Man, it's only the same 4 people asking questions today. Are those real people? Okay. Offside_opinions on TikTok says, how do you obtain a certificate of title lease? Wow, offside_opinions. For that, I will refer you to the numerous videos in our archives on our YouTube channel. That's not a question I can answer right now. It's too general. You need to give me more details. Follow-up is, what's the correct procedure in obtaining the certificate? Download the checklist, guys. www.grandacres.co.ke. Don't be lazy about this. Get the silly document. It's free. Read up. Ask questions of your licensed professionals. This is not something I can give you meaningful advice for in a 5-minute question and answer session. That's why we came up with a checklist for you. So download it. It's absolutely free. Get with a licensed advocate of the High Court of Kenya. Pay them what they are supposed to be paid. They are professionals. If they are licensed, get your counsel. Provide the necessary details so that you can be appropriately guided. That's the best answer I can give you. Offside_opinions on TikTok. Thank you for asking. Irene Oneta says, hello, Solo, great job you do. My concern is about the ongoing government housing projects. My question is, how can one own a unit there while the government has built them on public land? Well, the government, being the custodian of public lands, does indeed have the right to assign use, which is what the government is doing, is utilizing all the underutilized or unused government-owned or public lands for the affordable housing agenda. Nothing wrong with that. Just make sure that the title deed documents are in order. Do your due diligence. Even if it's a government selling, you still have to do your DD. Okay? And for that, again, Irene, I'll recommend you download our checklist if you haven't done so already from our website. It's absolutely free. www.grandacres.co.ke. Find the tab that says checklist, click on it, enter your details. It'll email you the checklist absolutely free. And work with licensed professionals to help you with your due diligence. Ezra.otieno on Instagram says, should the government require land sellers to at least provide utilities like water and electricity and sewer systems to individuals buying land from them? No, the government should not require land sellers to do that because utilities are supposed to be provided by government itself. Strictly speaking, the reason developers or land sellers provide utilities is because government has failed to do its job. So should government require land sellers? I'd say the only prerequisite for a government being allowed to make it a requirement is to provide incentives to the land sellers for doing the government's job by providing utilities like water and electricity and especially sewer systems. Those by far are the most expensive utilities to put into the ground, maybe even more than roads, depending on what kind of roads you're putting in. Very expensive. Private developers and land sellers should not be burdened with that. It's not sustainable. This is why in places like Tatu City and Tilisi and other master planned, fully developed and integrated communities or properties, you're having to buy a quarter of an acre or a half an acre. I think in Tatu City, I've seen half acres selling for 45, 50 million shillings. Why? Because it costs them a boatload of money to provide the utilities and the infrastructure that you're going to enjoy. If that was done by government like it's supposed to, the cost of land would come down significantly and people would be able to settle easier outside of the capital city, which is already strained. And the capital city is strained because it's the only place with utilities like sewer systems. Water we can argue about because you could sink boreholes and harvest rainwater and that sort of thing. Same with electricity, with the rural electrification program. It's certainly a lot easier to do that now than it used to be. But sewer systems, yeah, that's my 2 cents, Ezra. And I thank you for asking that question. Hadi Group on Instagram says, do you think it's wise for the government to implement a law whereby when a land seller sells land, they're required to provide some utilities? I think I just answered that, Hadi Group. I know Ezra is part of a Hadi Group. Yeah. Kanye Mwangi on TikTok says, my client wants to take out a loan for construction of apartments. What would they look out for? Okay, Kanye, if I remember your first question, you said that your client does properties, which implies that this would not be their first time constructing for apartments, is it? So they should know what to look out for. Um, Construction loans, those are a matter of the specific bank they want to work with. The different banks have different products for this sort of situation. First of all, they will require that you own the land free and clear so that they can encumber it as security, unless there is an alternative form of security your client can provide that is suitable to the bank or for the bank. What to look out for, I guess, manage your funding very carefully. Make sure you have sufficient funds because once you start, it gets more expensive if you keep stopping because of poor cash flows, as it were. So that would be my biggest thing. Make sure you are sufficiently funded to complete what you are starting. Other than that, they have, from your first question, Kanye, they have a lot more experience than I do constructing apartments on land, so they should know what else to look out for. Dog Patch 06 on TikTok says, "What's your take on the land next to the airstrip?" Which airstrip, Dog Patch 06? There are dozens of airstrips in Kenya. Captain Gen Z on TikTok says, "Let me know when you get to Boston. We have an investment group here. Coffee and golf on me." Done, Captain Gen Z, although you might need to teach me how to play golf. So far, I only know how to hold the club and swing with about a 50% success rate at actually hitting the ball. But I'll take you up on the coffee. Thank you. MC on TikTok says, "Do you partner with architects and interior designers?" 100% yes, MC. All our projects have been master planned by architects, the best. Burkhartman and Partners, for instance, on our Acacia project. I think this year, again, they got named top architectural firm in Africa. DLR Architects, these are globally award winning architects with offices all over the planet. Those are the types of architects we work with and partner with. Interior designers, not so much because we don't do vertical construction. We focus on horizontal development, which is infrastructure. That's all the stuff that goes in the soil underground, which does not require the services of an interior designer. So we do look forward to working with interior designers soon. But currently, we do not partner with those yet. 37 minutes past 8. That means we have, what, 23 minutes remaining? Send in your questions, guys. Comments, compliments, criticisms, commentaries, all the C's you can think of. Would love to hear from you. What's up, Solo? He's supposed to be watching. So I have a namesake in the office today who's supposed to be watching me on this live. I figured, yeah. JEst012 on TikTok says, "Why do you prefer properties outside Nairobi and its environment?" One main reason, really, price, cost of land. Um, for me to buy a 50-acre block of land in Nairobi, I could probably buy 1,000 acres outside of Nairobi. First of all, it's rare to find a 50-acre block of land anywhere in Nairobi these days, unless you're grabbing public land, which we don't do. uh, that's the main reason. It's a matter of land prices, affordability. For us to do what we do meaningfully, we need to buy in bulk, which is virtually impossible to do in Nairobi. It's cost prohibitive and there isn't much space for that business model. Thank you for asking. That's a great question. Elias Moriuki on Instagram says, have you been conned before in a land deal? Yes, I have. Um, yes, twice, actually, three times. Twice in the US, believe it or not, by pastors, of all people. Uh, I love pastors. Let me just say that, first of all, nothing wrong with pastors. But the standards are pretty high or for pastors, right? So when a pastor does that to you, it stings a little more than it would otherwise. So that was my first two times getting conned. Third time was here in Kenya on one of my very first purchases, buying land in Nanyuki. I bought two blocks of land simultaneously from the same seller. One went through well, the other one didn't. It's been 12 and a half years. I still do not have a title deed and no refund of the whopping 1.8 million shillings I paid for an acre back in 2012. Painful. So when I tell you to follow due process, uh, it's not for nothing, guys. I have experience. We have experience, good and bad. Learn from our bad ones. You don't have to make the same mistakes. Download the Grand Acres checklist. It's absolutely free. If you follow that checklist from step 1 to 9, it'll be virtually impossible for you to get caught. Elias's follow-up question is, when can we expect you back in doing the podcast of the tea with Pius and Solo? I have no clue, Elias. I'm not sure if it will ever come back, to be honest, at this point. We're just sort of seeing which way the wind blows. Pius is an incredibly busy guy, as am I. So we'll see. But thank you for asking. MC on TikTok says, side comment, your eloquence is praiseworthy. Thank you, MC. That's very kind of you to say. I appreciate that. I better be. My folks spent a boatload of money taking me to decent schools, so I guess something stuck. Was that the last question? Okay. We have 17 minutes, guys. Send in your questions or more compliments like the last one. I don't mind. Do you know anyone who minds compliments? I don't mind compliments at all. In fact, when people don't compliment me, I spend a few moments each day complimenting myself. Because if you don't love yourself, man, who else is? Uh, a healthy self-esteem is important, right? So encourage yourself, even if you're as ugly as last year's shoe. Look in the mirror and tell yourself how nice you look every now and then. Love yourself. TDS on TikTok says, what would you say is the next Nanyuki? TDS, you're jumping the gun, man. I'd say give us a couple of weeks and you should hear something. That's how we like to do it. Surprise, surprise. Thank you for asking, though.
I feel like that's not what you're asking.
Next in Nanyuki.
No. What is the next line?
Okay, okay. So Gladys over here, our capable social media manager, is interpreting that question for me better. What would you say is the next Nanyuki? Hmm. Sincerely, I don't think there is a next Nanyuki. I mean, let's be clear. Nanyuki was founded in 1907, right? How many years ago is that? 114, 117, 117 years ago. It's taken Nanyuki 117 years to be what it is today. Sure, it may not need to take another 117 years to create another Nanyuki. Maybe you could do it in 30, maybe 50. But currently, there isn't a place in this country I would place on that trajectory. The closest any other town could become the next Nanyuki, in my view, I'd have to say it would be Kitale. I know you're looking at me straight. Kitale town. Why? Because Kitale has a space. Kitale is very similar to Nanyuki in terms of uh, good climate, healthy rainfalls, at least on the windward side of Nanyuki. High altitude, just like Nanyuki, so great for farming. And the right demographic mix. One of the things that makes Nanyuki work and be what it is today is its cosmopolitan population. Not a single one tribe can claim Nanyuki like other towns. Originally belonged to the Maasai, at least at independence. Lots of Merus and Kikuyus bought land from the Maasais in the 70s and 80s, land buying companies. Many of those are now deceased, and their families have sold on to companies and people like ourselves. That's who we were buying from in 2012, 2010. I'm from Webuye, also have Kamba. Majority of Laikipia County, as with Nanyuki, is owned by families of white settler farmers from pre-independence days. So Nanyuki is unique in that sense. You have people from all over the world, really, who call it home. That's difficult to replicate, maybe even impossible. So I would not be so bold as to say there is a next Nanyuki TDS. That's my honest opinion. But thanks for asking. I hope I answered your question.
But there's a lot.
Uh-huh.
I think he's clarifying the question.
Okay, is it too late to buy in Nanyuki? No, it's not, because 10 years from now, someone else will be wishing they bought today. Just like today, there are blocks of land I wish I bought 12 years ago when we started. This cycle will continue until the day this world ends. Today is the cheapest that land will ever be, anywhere on the planet, really. So it's not too late. Yeah, you'll pay more than I did 12 years ago, but the guy buying 10 years from now will be saying the same thing relative to your price today. So it's not too late. Bust a move now, especially in Nanyuki. Ahadi Group on Instagram says, since you will be in Boston, why not make it to California? Where? If my geography serves me right, Ahadi Group, Boston and California are on opposite ends of that giant country called the US of A. One's on the East Coast, the other's on the West Coast. What's that, 6 hour, 7 hour flight across? But hey, why not? uh, we actually had plans to come to California. Those are still Those discussions are still being had and plans being made. So I I so look forward to coming to California sooner rather than later. I had a group, and of course, you guys will know before anyone else because you're part of the Grand Acres family, the Greater Gains community, and you, along with everyone else, as part of the Greater Gains community, will know before anyone else. So we look forward to it. Njoki on Instagram says, "What would you advise when it comes to purchase of land that's still going through succession process? What would you advise when it comes to purchase of land that's still going through succession process, installments, or just wait till it's done?" I've advised on this before, Njoki. If it's still going through succession, avoid like the plague until the succession is done. Too many variables, too many moving parts, too many things could go wrong during the succession process. It's just not worth the risk to me. So wait until it's done and engage. That's simple. Marube underscore RTBA on Instagram says, "How does land tenure systems influence the management of natural resources such as forests and water systems? How does Grand Acres influence this?" First of all, Grand Acres does not influence management of natural resources such as forests and water systems. We simply comply with the policies already in place, which are enforced by the relevant authorities in charge of that process, namely NEMA, WARMA, and all the others, Kenya Forest Services, Kenya Wildlife Services, so on and so forth. Land tenure systems, in what sense do they influence the management of national? I'm not sure they do. Land tenure has to do with whether or not it's leasehold or freehold. In either case, the policies as enforced by the agencies I just mentioned would apply, regardless of whether it's freehold or leasehold. And that's my view based on experience. Yeah, thank you for asking, Marube. Elias Moruki, again on Instagram, says, "How do you overcome challenges you face in running a land selling company?" I pray a lot, period. Uh, I happen to be a person of faith. I rely on God. Any successes we can claim are the direct result of His intervention and gracious hand upon us. And that's how I overcome challenges. That's a personal thing, but that's mine. Thank you for asking, Elias. TDS on TikTok says, "How about Samburu?" What about Samburu? The next Samburu? What about Samburu, TDS? Help me understand your question. No more questions. We have 6 minutes, 5 minutes now. 5 minutes, guys. 5 minutes, ladies and gents. One or two more questions, then we're done. TDS. Okay, TDS wins the award for most questions today. TDS says, "How about Samburu? Does it have investment potential?" I guess it would depend on the purpose for the investment. TDS. Samburu is a vast county, very arid, semi-arid at best. Unless you're looking to do some livestock ranching, which security is not that great up there for that. Um Maybe tourism industry if you have, a lodge. I have friends, a couple of friends who have lodges up in Samburu for tourism, do game drives, wildlife conservancy type stuff. Maybe, maybe. I'm not so excited about Samburu, to be honest. It's far from everything. So management is going to be expensive. Security is not great, as I mentioned. It's a dry, arid or semi-arid zone. So poor rainfalls. So expensive to be water secure. That sort of stuff. I'd put my money elsewhere. Thank you. Thanks for asking, TDS. Asava Isaiah on Instagram says, approximately how much might it cost me to change the name on the title deed from my mom's to mine? I have no idea, Isaiah. It would depend on, first of all, which lawyer you use for that service, because lawyers have sliding scales depending on their experience in the market, their name brand, that sort of thing. It would also depend on the value of the land, because to transfer or change names, which is a transfer of ownership, you have to pay Kenya Revenue Authority on behalf of the government a stamp duty, which is a transfer tax or name change tax, if you will. If it's leasehold, you're looking at 4% of the government valuation of that property. If it's freehold, you're looking at 2%. So depends, Isaiah. Best thing to do would be either provide more details, or even better, go consult a licensed advocate who can advise you appropriately. Provide them the details in private. If, because we are on a public forum, you might not want to divulge those details here. Uh, but yes, different things will determine what the cost ultimately will be to you. Breeder 9701 on TikTok says, I got you guys from Mkuru. I want to do farming in Naivasha. Is there a follow to that comment? Well, Breeder 9701, thank you for your comment. We love Mkuru and be Mkuru. They are our people. Those ones, we love them. We love them with our kidneys, man. Awesome, awesome people. If you want to do farming in Naivasha, I think that's a great thing. Naivasha is great for farming, provided you know what sort of farming you want to do. And we wish you all success with that venture. Abby_global on Instagram says, as the market continues to change in Kenya and the builders continues to build questionable homes slash designs, does land remain the most desirable option? I think so, Abby. Land is the raw material or the base for everything else. So land will always be on demand, whether or not people are building questionable homes. Demand for land will continue to rise as population increases, and especially because God is not creating any more land. We got the earth as it is, and that's it. Unless maybe you're in Hawaii, where that volcano is constantly spewing out lava into the ocean and creating new space, but not exactly habitable now. Yes, short answer, Abby, is yes. Land does remain the most desirable option, especially for long-term investment. So get yours today. If you do the math, there's less than 5 acres of land for every human being alive today on this planet. So get busy getting yours sorted out. Which companies do we recommend? Grand Acres, all day long, the most trusted land sellers in Kenya. Thank you, Abby, for asking. And thank you to each and every one of you for your questions, who sent in questions, for participating. Thank you for liking. Thank you for sharing. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for spending this precious 1 hour of your evening with us. As always, it's been a pleasure, and I look forward to the next one in a couple of weeks. Until then, happy land investing to you.